Welcome to the Santa Barbara Forum. I'm Elrawd MacLearn, your host today, and I'm sitting here having a discussion with Scott Wenz, the president of the Cars Are Basic organization. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
To start off our discussion, I want to give the audience a little bit of a background about who you are,
Sure.
and why you're so passionate about automobiles here in Santa Barbara County.
Well, first off, I was born and raised here. Went to school here, elementary school, Peabody School, La Cumbre, La Colina, San Marcos High School. Went to City College, and then went down to Long Beach State and got my degree down there. Back then, they didn't give you more than one degree. So if you had a double major, you just got one degree with a double major.
Oh, nice.
And then went into the Army, came back, and went to grad school at UCSB.
Wow, quite the history there. How did you get so interested in kind of transportation?
I was one of a number of individuals that started going to the city council saying, your transportation goals may be reasonable from a point of view, but the outcomes are failing on a massive basis.
And was it friends that got you going to these city council meetings? Because people don't just unfortunately, they don't just go to city council meetings to make comments.
Well, what
got you started?
What happened is that my grandfather used to be a council member.
Okay.
And I would go down and just roll my eyes and say, Grandpa, this is what's going on. And he would go, well, you need to go talk to him. And then I started seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 people on a consistent basis, not every meeting, but on a monthly basis or every other month, showing up, talking about exactly the same things. And so I went, you know what, maybe I ought to contact these guys and we could sit down. And we had a sit-down meeting, and CAB was formed out of that, and that was 23 years ago.
Wow, and you're still, were you the president of CAB back then? Okay.
No. At that particular time, I was seriously contemplating leaving the country and going to Saudi Arabia because I'm an exercise physiologist by avocation and education. And they wanted me to go, the company I was working for wanted me to go to Saudi Arabia and head up Whitaker Corporation's healthcare program for foreign nationals. And it was a very lucrative contract. And I was seriously thinking about that. So when CAB was formed, I said, look guys, you want to make me president, it isn't going to happen. Let's have Jay become president, I'll become vice president, so if I get the contract, I'm gone, and it won't hurt the organization.
Oh, wow. So I guess in short also, how would you describe Cars Are Basic, and what do you guys do in short?
Cars Are Basic is a transportation advocacy program that fights for the ability of people to have their choice of transportation options and the ability to operate them if they're personal automobiles.
Okay. And then so that's the goal. And then how do you go and kind of affect those goals in the public arena? Would you say?
We try to educate the public, and that's probably the hardest job to do. You want the public to be aware of the fact that, by the way, there are government agencies and there are government elected officials and there are government hired operatives whose job it is to take away your right to own an automobile and to drive it.
Well, okay, Scott, I'm just going to stop you right there.
There you go.
That is a very strong statement.
Sure.
To say the government's job is to take away my right to own an automobile.
That's right.
Well, is it even a right to own an automobile?
Yes.
Okay. So we have rights to own, I guess, personal property and a vehicle.
Right.
And you're saying the government, our local politicians consider it their right to, or their job or obligation to take away my right to own a vehicle. Is that what you're saying?
And they're using social policy and environmental policy to justify that.
Okay, that's a very very strong, very big claim, and you're fighting against that. and not only by educating the community, but you're also going to these local board meetings on every level, county, city, etc., or just a specific city?
No, we attempt to go to the Board of Supervisors and the County Association of Governments whenever there's an item that we find specifically interesting and that the public should know about. So we will go there and speak out.
Wow. That's and you've been doing that 20 years, going to all these meetings.
Yeah, sometimes I look back on it and I go, you got to be nuts.
What would you say, doing it for so long, it seems like you're very passionate about what you stand for, and I assume in this, like you said, it's very difficult to kind of educate the public community on these things. What is really just driving you, and what's the fuel for your fire in fighting in this arena for so long?
Being lied to by politicians and public employees.
Really? When did you come to this kind of enlightenment, per se?
It started approximately 3 years after we became an organization. We had city council members, we had people in the community who were making claims that were anti-environment, and that we wanted to see massive accidents on the roads, and we didn't care about the public. That was an absolute lie.
They were saying those things about cars are basic,
That's
the organization.
Correct. That's correct.
And so they were essentially saying that you guys are wanting to bring harm to the community.
Yes.
And these were government officials that were saying this.
Not only government officials, but there was an entire cottage industry around the environmental sciences. And you have people that have for years had heavy political influence at city council and board of supervisors without any opposition. Well, I mean, after all, we're for the environment. And all of a sudden CAB comes up and says, oh, by the way, your numbers don't seem to work out correctly. I'm a research scientist. I know how to crunch numbers. For instance, about midway through the last 20-some years, we had 2 people on our board. One was a medical doctor who had 2 doctorates, not 1, but 2.
Impressive, and very impressive, yeah.
We had a black box physicist from the aerospace industry who was just a steel trap. Roger would sit down and look at stuff that I would take a couple of days to go through, and he'd go, nah, this doesn't work. And I'd look at him and go, how do you do that? It's because he was that smart. Unfortunately, he passed away, and I didn't realize just how steel trap and smart he was until I was at the funeral. And you had astrophysicists and nuclear scientists, PhDs, coming and talking about what a great guy he was. And I'm going, we were lucky to have him on our board.
Yeah. Now, going back to these false claims that were made against CAB.
Sure.
Would you say that you are supportive of having a better environment and,
of course,
and those kind of things? And
you'd be nuts not to.
Okay. So you are for that, and CAB is essentially purely focused on a person's right to owning their vehicle
and freedom of travel.
Okay.
Not just owning a vehicle, but freedom of travel. For instance, if back when the country was formed, if you told somebody they couldn't have a horse and buggy, or they couldn't have a horse to travel on, they'd look at you and think you were absolutely nuts, because it was essential to the entire society that you have the ability to travel and to do your business.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have a horse and buggy and you're a farmer, how are you going to get your goods to market or go anywhere? Yeah, that's an excellent example. So, and having this freedom of travel, and how is that? Because someone's could say, Scott, I don't really understand completely or fully how this is really affecting me on a day-to-day basis. And what would you tell someone like that?
I would go back to my history background.
Okay.
And in ancient history, it was obvious that the reason you had small fortress towns is because you had to have narrow roads and you had to have the ability to defeat invaders. Okay? And when society became more successful and the armies and so forth provided a peaceful society to live in, the streets became wider. They carried more transportation. Look at Rome. Rome was famous for its transportation roads.
It's true.
So was Egypt. And what happened when those roads opened up? Commerce boomed.
So would you say in supporting in another, I guess, something that's a little bit more discussed and talked about here in Santa Barbara, at least in Goleta, for example, is people talk about growth or anti-growth. So a current issue, and if you're a proponent of bringing in more commerce and having wider avenues and wider roads, would you say that's going to change that kind of country feel
Exactly.
that Goleta has? And would you say that's a good thing, a bad thing? What are your thoughts?
Well, Goleta is a classic example
Okay.
because my dad, my uncles were born and raised there. So, and I was born and raised in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
But when my parents were born and raised there, Old Town Goleta was a spot in the road. It was a place where you came to get some gasoline, you got some groceries and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
It serviced the ranches in the area, okay? And so Goleta was formed, and this I find really ironic. Goleta was formed as a city because the people of Goleta were angry at the county of Santa Barbara for opening up and rezoning the land for more housing. Okay? So what has the city of Goleta done in the last 10 years? Look at the developments out there off of Phelps. Look at the developments off of Stork. Look at the development off of Los Caneros. Okay? They've been opening up development as massively and as fast as they could.
It seems that way. Yeah.
And now they're turning around. This very council that's been promoting this and has been through their lineage from when it was first started is now saying, oh, but we now have a car problem. We now have an issue going on here, and we have to narrow Hollister. We have to take capacity off the streets. Yet Goleta is booming economically in comparison to downtown Santa Barbara.
That is very much agreed.
And you just, because I live downtown,
Mm-hmm.
I was just out in Goleta shopping this afternoon
Yeah.
because I didn't want to deal with the traffic downtown.
This kind of segues into another kind of hot topic question. State Street. State Street.
My favorite subject.
It's gone back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of business owners I know like having State Street blocked off,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the city council who wants to open it up. Okay. Oh, have I?
Can I step in on this?
Please
one?
do. Please
Okay.
do.
The city council, the majority, has developed a downtown advisory group and then stacked that advisory group with people that want to keep State Street shut down. The city council then, was it this week? No, I guess it was last week, voted to continue the concept of extending the shutdown of State Street for 2 more years, which means it'll be shut down for 4 years total. So to state that the council wants to open up State Street, I find no evidence of that.
Okay. So you would say that having State Street closed is bad for the businesses.
Well, it has to do, you have to understand that downtown Santa Barbara is part of a transportation grid that was opened up over 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was broken and redone. It was broken again and redone. There was a massive earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
It was broken and redone again. So you have a transportation grid that was laid out based upon the needs of the city and the eventual problems that might hit it, like an earthquake or floods and that sort of thing. Now, you have downtown Santa Barbara that approximately in the late 80s, you had Dave Davis, who was the community development director for the city of Santa Barbara, say, you know, we have this plan, and this is going to be so wonderful. State Street is 4 lanes plus parking. We can't have this. This is a scar on the city of Santa Barbara. And you kind of go, wait a minute. The businesses are thriving downtown. Goleta was not an economic engine.
Are you saying they're thriving now or back?
No, back in the 80s and the 90s.
Okay.
Goleta was not an economic engine. Fairview was one of the first developments out there. Camino Real wasn't even there. It was all agricultural fields. Okay? And downtown was it. Well, we're going to do this, and people are going to love it because we're going to widen the sidewalks and narrow the street. We're going to take all the parking off of the street, and we're going to take the 4 lanes, and we're going to take it down to 2. And you watch, everybody's going to love it. Well, the comment that was made, if it doesn't help the economic development of downtown, we will retrofit it. They did the first 3 blocks from Victoria down to Carrillo. And the long-time middle-class businesses that supported the middle class and gave jobs to people started suffering because people didn't want to go down to that location. And the comment that came back by the same community development director is, the problem is it isn't a large enough economic area, and therefore it can't support the businesses. So what we need to do is we need to go further. So they extended it down to Delgado. And guess what happened? The businesses continued to fail.
So essentially what you're saying is from the 90s until today, essentially as the street has gotten smaller,
That's right.
economic development has shrunk, almost directly correlated to it.
That's right.
In a sense.
That's right.
Okay. And so the idea of completely closing down the street is further harming those businesses and further creating a kind of a recession in that area.
Well, what you've seen downtown.
Yeah.
What businesses do you think have thrived the best with this closing?
I would say that probably some of the local restaurants, I would say.
That's right.
Most of the little boutique stores and some of the other shops and whatnot have kind of closed down or gone away.
That's right.
I would say with the advent 2020, where you had a lot of businesses were allowed to create some outdoor dining, which was all restaurants.
Right.
That was a boon for them.
That's right.
Except
I agree.
any other business, yeah.
I agree. But it's been the bars and restaurants. Just found out over the last 2.5 years, the city has given to a number of the bars and restaurants in the area $11 million in subsidies.
In total.
Yeah. 2 years, $11 million.
Wow.
Did that go to the retail shops? No. It went to the bars and restaurants. Okay. Well, the retail shops, La Arcada, which is one of the favorite places I love. It's old town Santa Barbara. It's when I was growing up in the 40s and 50s. You went down to La Arcada and it had the fountain down at the end. It was great, right?
Yeah.
Lost its anchor retail store. Okay. Down at Paseo Nuevo, they lost another retail store. They lost Nordstrom's.
Yep.
Macy's closed before the pandemic.
Yep.
Okay? The Paseo Nuevo was supposed to be the answer to the doldrums that were killing downtown Santa Barbara, and the downtown Santa Barbara doldrums were caused by the narrowing of State Street and the taking of parking and the shutting down of the transportation grid. It never achieved its goals.
And I know the city, to answer some of those parking problems, they built several parking structures.
That's right.
Throughout the downtown district there.
Yeah.
You're saying that it's purely the widening or shortening or the complete blockage, as we see in State Street, that is causing or hampering the local development, economic development.
Part of it is psychological.
Okay.
You have to understand. I'll give you a classic example. Los Gatos, California. Do you know where that is?
No.
Okay, Los Gatos is up by San Jose. and if you go west towards Santa Cruz, there's this neat little community. It's kind of like a mini Santa Barbara, okay? And the same mix of people and wealth and so forth.
Yeah.
Los Gatos, California has a main street, only 2 lanes, parking on it and so forth, and they created the parking off to the side. Well, you went down to Los Gatos on a summer evening or a holiday evening and so forth. Well, maybe we can get a parking spot right in front of where we want to go. And 9 out of 10 times it was all parked up because the guys that lived closest would go over there, right? And so you went over to the parking lot, was next door. But it was a psychological, we can go downtown and park, right? Los Gatos did exactly what the city of Santa Barbara did approximately 5 years ago. They took the parking off that main street. Guess what happened?
I would assume that business went down.
That's right. That's right, exactly. And then they blamed it on the recession that was hitting at that time. Okay?
Interesting. Convenient.
Very convenient, okay? So you have a concept in downtown that said back in the 80s, this is what we'll do. And each time it failed, the person that promoted it the most, the former community development director, said, it's because it isn't a large enough economic area. We need to go all the way to Stearns Wharf. Well, they went down to Stearns Wharf. Did Old Town prosper? No. The Entrada project, which is the final development down with the California Hotel redo and the Funk Zone and so forth. We warned the city of Santa Barbara, if you don't keep State Street open, if you don't open it back up, what you're going to get is you're going to get people that will go down to that location and will stay at that location because they're not going to want to get out of their Mercedes. They're not going to get out of their BMW or their Porsche and walk 5 blocks up to De La Guerra after having a meal at the California or in the Funk Zone. Guess what's happened? Exactly what we predicted.
Now, besides, in a sense, reopening up State Street.
Sure.
Let's say you have to compromise. What would some solutions be that CAB has offered or would offer in that scenario?
Well, there is no compromise.
Okay.
And the reason there's no compromise is because we have the statistical evidence proving it. For instance, the bicycle master plan that the city of Santa Barbara has the Sola Street bike path coming over the Mitchell Trainer Bridge, going down to Sola and coming over. That's the plan, right? The city of Santa Barbara staff just stated that they need to open up Victoria, both directions, take the parklets off west of Victoria, take the parklets off of State Street, because they don't want to drive traffic onto Sola because it'll interfere with the bike traffic that they plan to put on Sola. The problem is that should be done regardless. Where are you going to have the film festival? I know, we'll have it on State Street. We'll have it right next to the parklets. How are we going to have all those cars come up in the streaming spotlights and all the rest of this stuff, right? You're not going to have it because State Street is shut down. Victoria is shut down. We've made a proposal to the city of Santa Barbara because, after all, the city of Santa Barbara has plenty of money, right?
Supposedly.
Okay. You have failed in your program. We've used your own statistical evidence and your own economic outcomes and said, you have failed. Why not take the first 3 blocks that you narrowed and open it back up to 4 lanes and parking and give it 5 years and see if it helps?
How much do you think that would cost?
It would cost millions.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, but they spent millions on shutting it down. They've cost the city of Santa Barbara untold millions in lost economic benefit and taxes.
Do you think there is any hope, per se, right now with the downtown kind of doldrums or low economic?
No, let me. With the current council you have, you have a head in the sand attitude when it comes to transportation. And that council, unless there's a nuclear bomb goes off in the middle of the council and they are threatened with the loss of their seats, will not change their outcome.
So basically, that's the only hope for the city of Santa Barbara, is to remove pretty much the entire city council, to get members on that council who are actually proactively going to improve the economic situation there.
And open up the city to people coming and going. See, and you sit here and you kind of go, what are they doing? Okay?
Yeah.
This last Tuesday, agenda item 11 on the city council had to do with downtown development. And they want to change I believe it's R3 and commercial areas where they allow housing developments from a maximum of 35 to maybe 40 at the tops, right? To over 120 units per acre. That means you're talking 5 and 6 story buildings.
Yeah.
Pearl Chase would be rolling in her grave right now if she knew about it. I mean, the defender of downtown Santa Barbara, the defender of the colonial Spanish style that draws massive amounts of tourists, is being destroyed.
To kind of play the devil's advocate,
Sure.
On that, a lot of, as we know, there's a current housing crisis here in the county, pretty much entirely.
Right.
How does CAB see a way of solving that crisis? Because yes, if we had very large, heavily populated blocks, you're going to have a lot of transportation issues.
That's right.
And so how do you preserve what Santa Barbara is, but at the same time provide residency or housing for folks?
I'm glad you brought that subject up, because in one of I've attended a lot of sessions, and I'm a rental property owner.
Okay.
And one of the rental property association meetings that we had, and this goes back almost 15 years ago now, we had a guy that came in and he says, look, I've done an analysis of Santa Barbara and other locations in the world that are similar to Santa Barbara. There's only 6 places in the entire world that have the latitude and longitude, the next to the ocean, and the weather pattern that Santa Barbara has. Cannes, France is one of them.
Yeah.
There's a place down in Chile that's another. There's a place called Sydney, Australia. Okay? And I forget the other 2. And he said, you will never, ever be able to build enough housing for the people that want to live here.
If it's only 6 locations in the world, you've
got it.
Demand,
That's
yeah.
And there's only so much land. And we have the Los Padres National Forest on one side, and you have the Pacific Ocean on the other side, which also influences the transportation grid because you only have so much land.
Yeah.
So you screw up the transportation grid, and you get the backups on 101 and so forth. The city of Santa Barbara bought, I forget the designation, I think it was 144. It was a state highway. It's called Cliff Drive in Las Positas. In buying that stretch of highway, they doubled the main arterial roads in the city of Santa Barbara. Where was the other main arterial road? State Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? Why is Cliff Drive in Las Positas important? Why is State Street important? If 101 gets cut off, where's the traffic going to go?
Yeah, it's going to have to go through those major thoroughfares.
I don't know if you've ever been driving on Upper State Street when there's been an accident on 101 and the traffic's backed up.
Yeah.
Have you tried to get down State Street when that happens?
A nightmare.
That's right. That's right. There was a main cutoff. I forget what it was. I think it was I can't remember. I think it was a natural disaster. Oh, I know. It was a forest fire, and it cut off 101. It took 3 hours to go from Goleta to Cliff Drive.
Wow.
3 hours.
That's
Okay.
pretty much parking lot.
And what has the city of Santa Barbara been doing with Cliff Drive? They want to narrow it down even more.
Ooh.
Las Positas has been intentionally narrowed by former mayor and council under Mayor Schneider. $14 million bicycle path program that is doing this to Las Positas.
Which is only going to increase the congestion.
That's right.
But to bring it back to
I'm sorry.
housing,
Yeah.
what are the solutions, or is there a solution? Because I know you mentioned that we're always going to have a high demand
Right.
For housing
Right.
here. Is there any way to mitigate that, or is it just an it is what it is kind of scenario?
It depends on what you want. Okay? The state of California has allowed a lot of people to come in. Some of them are documented, some of them aren't.
Okay.
It's increasing the population of the state. At the same time, the state of California has increased the amount of welfare without any demands on it that says, you want welfare, good, you get to work for part of that welfare. And if you haven't gotten off welfare in a couple of years, you don't get any more. And it continues to be this draw. And people keep coming, and they keep coming because they see dollars in front of them. They see the weather.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's going to be the answer? Well, Scott, you're just this mean, nasty-spirited person. You don't want to see people achieve, and it's this income inequality that you have to understand. And I go, wait a minute. Let's go back to historically where societies flourished.
Yeah.
Rome, Greece, other places. Okay? There was huge income inequality in those places. But the level of the people of the quote working poor and the middle class rose. So why should you be upset if somebody in Hope Ranch has $500 million and Scott only has $100,000? Well, guess what? If that goes up and the ability of the people to increase their level of subsistence, their quality of life, I'm sorry, that's what I was looking for, then why should you care if there's income inequality?
And I think going back to what you were saying, the way you can increase your quality of life has a lot to do with transportation, correct?
Sure. If you want to have a job in Ventura and live in Santa Barbara, you can get in your car and you can drive down there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why did I use that? Because I used to teach at Oxnard JC. And that was down when it was down in Oxnard, in downtown. I mean, literally, it was storefronts. Okay? And I used to drive every day.
Ooh, it's quite the commute.
Yeah, and I barely made enough money to cover my expenses and so forth, but I taught women's conditioning, body mechanics, and health education. And I loved it. And because of my background in doing research at the Cottage Hospital and Sampson and so forth, I took a lot of that medical knowledge and I incorporated that into what I taught.
Oh, were you gonna?
No, I was just going to say there was a corporate change within the junior college.
I see.
And there was a massacre of a bunch of the part-time people. I was one of them. Okay.
Which is unfortunate, but ultimately allowed you, I assume, to do more political activism, in a sense.
And I never wanted to do that, by the way.
Oh, well, I would say that might be the best kind of people who you don't want to do something, but you're so compelled. And which kind of brings me back to what I asked originally, like
Sure.
your passion and the reasons why. Have you seen any successes throughout the duration of CAP?
We've had a number of successes, and 2016 bicycle master plan debate, we forced the Bicycle Coalition to admit to failure in its Safe Routes to School program, and we have had other successes along the line. We pointed out that curb extensions called bulb outs. The city of Santa Barbara, the city of Carpinteria, and the city of Goleta continue to put these things in. They're very expensive. Guess what? There's no statistical evidence in entire North America that proves that bulb outs reduce pedestrian accidents. Not one paper is out there.
What's the purported or intended reason, or how is it assumed that they reduce?
Oh, well, you have to understand, if we put this bulb out there, people can look and see whether or not there's cars coming. And so it'll be safer. But guess what? Instead of a $50,000 bulb out on each corner, how about a $10,000 FOB ready to put in?
What's an FOB?
Oh, freight on board.
Okay.
Okay. In other words, the final cost to you is, and this was about 2 years ago, is $10,000 for a flashing crosswalk system that's solar powered and has IR interaction, received from the company, ready to put into the ground. They give you the poles, they give you all the software, everything's ready to go, put it in, boom. And that flashing crosswalk will alert the drivers that there's somebody going to cross. And that's been proven to work. But guess what? That's not good enough for the anti-car people. Now, I find it also interesting that the city of Santa Barbara attempted to do a dump on Cars Are Basic and trying to snow us and to get off our back. We're tired of you being critical of our transportation policies. One of the papers they dumped on us was written by Drusilla Van Hingel, PhD. Drusilla Van Hingel, PhD, was one of the huge anti-car advocates and was employed by the city of Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And that paper said, bulb outs are great, bulb outs are fine. And then at the bottom of the paper, there's a little note by her saying, ironically though, pedestrians could be at greater risk for accidents because of their design. And I saw that. I walked into the council. I put it down in front of the council. I said, this is what your advocate has done. You as council members now have to admit to the failure of the design as well as the outcomes. And they raised up 4 fingers and took down 3 and said, we don't care. And that's what you hear in the city of Goleta. The city of Goleta's council is unbelievably bigoted against statistical evidence. Do you know that the city council of Goleta has never done a baseline study of how many bicycles are on the streets?
I did not know that. No.
The CAB has. Last summer, during the pandemic, from 7 to 9 in the morning, they had 17 riders. We did another study approximately a month ago. They had 12 riders.
Now, when you say 17 or 12 riders, what does that mean?
That means going both directions from 7 to 9 in the morning on Old Town Hollister. That's how many bicycle riders.
Oh, okay. That's not very many.
No, it is not.
Not at all.
Yeah, and you've seen the same outcomes. See, when City of Goleta was first formed, we started doing counts on the streets of Santa Barbara. And Upper State Street, we had at State and Delavina approximately 70 bicycle riders from 7 to 9 in the morning. That's a lot of bike riders.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Went out to Goleta, and boom, guess what? 7 to 9 in the morning, we had 65 bicycle riders. I'm kind of going, wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And as a bicycle rider, I said, okay, if that's what the people want to do, then we have to accommodate it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The last time the city of Santa Barbara used a transportation agency, a private agency, to come in and do a bicycle count, at State and Delavina they had 45 riders, which matched 100% the cab statistics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What has changed? First off, there are fewer younger riders than there were in 1980. They've gotten older, they have kids, they have obligations, they have to go places and do things and not riding their bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the state of California gave illegals the right to have driver's license. All of a sudden, a lot of those Hispanic guys that were riding their bikes up and down to get to work at this restaurant or that place or work in warehouses and so forth, said, we're not going to get up and ride a bike when it's cold in the morning or it's raining. We got a buddy over here who has a truck or a van.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give him a few bucks. Boom. Well over 50% of the working force riders disappeared just by doing that one thing.
Even with kind of ride your bike to work programs done by the county and the city as well, that hasn't increased ridership?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Remember what I said when we were talking before,
Mm-hmm.
that the Safe Routes to School program by the Bicycle Coalition, they admitted in 2016 it failed.
Yeah.
They are talking, and you have to love their verbiage. I mean, they have great writers. I wish the hell cab had some writers like this. They talk about, we have to have safe connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Connectivity between the west side and the east side and the north side and the south side. And we have that safe connectivity, we'll get more bicycle riders on the streets. You go, okay. Didn't the city of Santa Barbara create 25 miles of interconnected bike paths?
Mm-hmm.
And they cost millions of dollars? Yeah. Well, what was the outcome at the last time we forced the city of Santa Barbara to do a bike count? Well, let's see, they had, that's right, 1,600 riders from 7 to 9 in the morning on their 25 miles of bike paths. The original baseline count was 1,700. That was without any bike paths. And then in the 1980s, they had 3,000 some odd bicycle riders and no bike paths. And the last time in 2013 when they did a bike count, they had 1,600. That should tell somebody something. But the anti-car, the hardcore, bigoted environmental group cannot stand the fact that they're losing power. So they turn around and they say to the council people that they helped get elected, don't listen to them because you won't be on the council. You won't be a board of supervisor member if you do.
Mm. So they're the ones kind of pulling the strings,
of course,
in a sense.
Of course.
Now,
and they're very wealthy, by the way.
I know you talked about earlier that having a vehicle is a means to increase your economic ability and standing.
All right.
How does a bicycle do that, or does it do that? Because I know you guys, or CAB, is supporting and fighting for the right to own your vehicle and to keep the streets wide for that. How does the bicycle or cyclist fit into that kind of paradigm?
We fight for the right of people to choose whatever transportation they want.
Okay, I see.
And if the program doesn't work and it interferes with somebody's right to travel in an automobile, then that is an absolute failure. The first president of Cars Are Basic was a competitive bicyclist.
Okay.
The first vice president of Cars Are Basic was an avid bicyclist, and up until his ankles went bad, was riding between, 50 and 75 miles a week was what I was riding.
That's a lot.
And then on holidays, I'd get up to 100.
Wow, that's quite impressive. So I see that's a very good value to have, and it does make sense that your method of transportation does have an economic impact on an individual.
Sure.
Would you or have you tried to run for office, or how effective has CAB been getting candidates into office?
Okay, first off, unlike the Bicycle Coalition and Coast and the Community Environmental Council and the Environmental Defense Center, we do not engage in backing of individuals. We can have individuals from CAB going out and promoting people, but CAB does not do this. CAB has never taken one dime, not one red penny of government money. Every one of the groups I just mentioned has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? So when it comes to doing this, we say, if you like what you see, you need to vote for this person, but we don't mention the person. Just say, you need to vote for this type of person. If you don't like what you see, vote for these other people. I mean, one of the things that CAB set down as a hard rule is, number one, the very first thing that the founding board set as a rule: you do not lie. Don't fib. Don't try to make up a story to support your position. If you can't support it with fact, keep your mouth shut. And that's what really has angered our opposition. They've never been able to hang anything on us.
Because you've been so factual.
Yeah.
And so you, in a sense, or CAB in a sense, stays out of the elections and the campaigns, more or less.
The only thing that we step into is, by law, we are prohibited from stepping into any campaign having to do with a state law or a federal law. Can't do it. But if you don't like something that's going on at the local level, the county level, then you can step in and say, by the way, we find this not to be a good thing to do. And we told the City Council of Santa Barbara, your judgment of putting a roundabout at Olive Mill and Coast Village Road is absolutely wrong, is not supported by fact. And they said, well, we have a problem here and we're going to fix the problem. Oh, really? According to the numbers that you gave us, you have 1/4 of an accident every 6 months at that location. But it's an irregular intersection. I said, but does it work?
Yeah. Has anyone from CAB ever run for office, or?
No.
Okay, so you're strictly a watchdog.
Yes.
Kind of group.
Yes. We did have a supporter who never a CAB board member, who became a city councilwoman. That was Michael Self.
Okay.
And Frank Hotchkiss.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, just because as I'm thinking about this, I feel like if you've had such a long decades of being involved and going to these board meetings, and it sounds like they, for the most part, refuse to listen to you or work with you. Personally, I would feel like, you know what? I'm just, like you said before, the only hope for State Street is to get the folks out of the council.
That's right.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, like, if this isn't working, if talking and showing them the facts doesn't work, then I feel like this next step is more of like, okay, let's go to the polls and change the people that are on these boards.
I understand it, and it's a logical step, but we cannot rationally change our position without changing what we are. It's that simple. I mean, we made a proposal to the County Association of Governments to get rid of MTD. And we said, we have a proposal for you that will save the taxpayer money and increase the number of people using alternative transportation. And not one member of the SBCAG staff, not one member of the SBCAG board ever bothered to come back and tell us, well, this is kind of interesting. What are you talking about? Okay? So I went to the next SBCAG meeting, and I said, a couple months, the last one, I mean, and I said, couple months ago, we made this proposal to you, and not one of you ever bothered to get back to us. And one of our new advisory board members, who's born and raised in another country, said, that's a great idea because that's exactly what we did in our capital city. And it exploded alternative transportation use. And it didn't cost us a dime.
What was the solution?
It's very simple. You just take all of the rolling stock, all of the land that MTD owns.
Rolling stock meaning buses?
Buses, cars, all of it.
Okay.
All of the land. And then you turn around and you take a minimum of 5 years of the salaries that you'd be paying for all the people that would be working there. You put it into a trust fund, and you take that money and you give it to Uber, Lyft, and other agencies that are private agencies, and let them do point-to-point delivery. Right now, you have people walking over to Anapamuan State, pick up a bus, right? You go out to Hollister, out by Old Town there, and they sit there waiting. Well, practically everybody has a cell phone, or their friend has a cell phone. They could go, oh, by the way, we'd like to have a pickup at 8 o'clock in the morning at this location. We'd like you to deliver us out to Los Caneros.
Yeah, that sounds. That sounds like a pretty good idea.
And it's worked in other locations.
And the council,
the
SBK, County Association of Governments, was like, no.
They went mute, and the reason they went mute is because if they implemented this and it actually worked, it would point out to people like Doss Williams, Salud Carbajal, Susan Rose, Gail Marshall, Hartman, Greg Hart, all of them, that they've been wrong. And they've been wrong for 20 years. These are people that are so embedded in the political process. You see, the power that goes with it is another really seductive item. I'm a board of supervisor. I'm a former assembly person.
Yeah.
I'm a city council member. I am the mayor. Okay? And that gets really seductive.
So it is, as they say, power corrupts. Definitely, I would agree that's true. Now, if CAB was in an ideal situation,
right,
and all the things that you were fighting for happened, because I know you said that when you guys first created the organization, you didn't think it would go this long.
No.
So if there was a point where it was like, wow, we've achieved all our goals, we don't need to be around anymore, what would that look like?
It would be wonderful. I would stop looking at every single council and every county board of supervisor meeting, trying to ferret out the nuances. I'd get up and go, I don't have to do this today, right?
Yeah.
But here's the problem. And what would happen is that, and you've seen it historically, whether it's been Great Britain, the United States Congress, Rome, whatever, okay? The people that lose the power get angry. They will then come back and say, well, we have to do something about this because they're being unreasonable. Well, what are you going to do? What, are you going to fight the statistics? But they've been fighting the statistics for over 20 years. They haven't been able to get the bicycle riders. They haven't been able to get people to walk. They haven't been able to get people to, they haven't been able to get people, you haven't been able to get people, and I could keep going down the list.
Yeah.
But that's not good enough for them. And now you have a socialist command economy coming out of Sacramento, and you have had that since Jerry Brown. That's been taking away local...
The first or the second time he was governor?
Second.
Okay.
And what you've been having is they've been taking away local control, so local zoning, local wants and desires no longer have the effect of law.
Yeah. That's definitely something that is concerning. for every Californian, I would say. And going back to that kind of ideal situation, it would be more wider streets, just for the main thoroughfares, or every street.
Well,
you know.
Let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that George Girth, the former transportation engineer for the city of Santa Barbara, made a mistake with us on, is that he agreed with us that having main arterial and main artery streets that are efficient draws traffic onto those streets and away from the housing developments and the side streets.
Makes a lot of sense.
Now, when CAB was formed, we proved to the City Council of Santa Barbara that a bicyclist could beat the rush hour traffic from Delavina and State to 5 Points by using the side roads.
Impressive.
I did it.
Yeah.
And our competitive bicyclist, he actually beat me.
Now, being avid cyclists,
right?
Is that maybe a little bit different than the average daily commuter who's riding their bike?
No.
Okay.
Because if you have quiet streets on the side that parallel the main artery streets, why not? Why would you go out on the State Street where there's all this commute traffic when the street next door gives you a quiet ride and you can enjoy the ride?
Makes a lot of sense to me. If folks want to be involved with CAB, how can they do that?
Well, first off, they can send us an email, cab@carsarbasic.org. It's a .org. Say, we want to be on your email list. You'll get a blizzard of information. Sometimes it almost buries you. Okay? You can also show up to the CAB meetings. The CAB meetings are the last Wednesday of each month, unless there's a holiday and we shift it around. And we're meeting presently at the Santa Barbara IHOP at State and Valerio. It's the last Wednesday of the month. I believe this month it's the 23rd. It's at 6:30 in the evening.
Awesome. Thank you so
It's
much,
been a pleasure,
Scott, for talking with me. It's been a pleasure. I've learned so much just sitting
Well,
here
I'm glad.
discussing. Thank you, viewers, for having a sit down with us, with Scott and I, and we hope that you have learned something. And once again, Scott, what's the email address?
cab@carsarbasic.org.
Okay. Thank you all for tuning in. You have a wonderful evening or morning or afternoon. Have a good day.